of the Catholic University of America, where she graduated from the university honors program magna cum laude, and of Seton Hall University Law School. She is an attorney licensed to practice in her native Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and District of Columbia. She's with America Rising, and I want to welcome in Alex Wilkes. Alex, good morning, and thank you for coming on the broadcast.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Now, do you prefer Alexandra or Alex?
My mother prefers Alexandra, but you can call me Alex.
Okay. I was going to say, if I know I have a daughter that everybody calls Katie, but her father calls her Catherine. So you understand how parents are, right?
I do understand very well.
Now, first, I want to ask you, you are obviously a young, very successful professional woman who is a conservative. You, I guess you have been very, very open and outspoken about your draw to conservative politics. What kind of obstacles have you seen both in school, when you were in school, and now that you're a young woman in, well, as a conservative, where you really don't see a lot of young conservative women right now?
Well, you know, what's interesting about the left is that they proclaim to be the side of diversity. And I think what they don't realize is that what they're actually promoting is a homogenous sort of culture, insofar as if you are a woman, you must therefore be liberal. Mm-hmm. And all of us have to think the same because of our gender. And, you know, it's amazing to me, even just recently with the Supreme Court fight over Judge Kavanaugh. You know, I was pretty outspoken in that fight, and on social media, I would have men coming after me saying, you know, basically that I was, you know, being like a bad woman for you know, believing things that I was believing. And so, you know, it's when you don't fit a typical mold, if you're young, if you're female, and you espouse different beliefs than the left, you're always going to be a target. But it makes it that much more fun.
I'm glad you can at least keep a sense of humor about this, Alex, because what's going on right now, in some circles, I mentioned this at the outset of my broadcast this morning, and I've been talking about it for months. I think this nation's in a civil war, and I think what we see now, and certainly what we saw in Portland the other day with what Antifa was, how they were harassing and threatening people. I'm going to play some audio from that on the show later on today. But there are some things going on right now that the midterms are going to really tell us a lot about the direction in which this country is going, won't they?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that was especially true just in the confirmation fight with Judge Kavanaugh. Mm-hmm. You know, here we have, you know, an extremely accomplished justice, or now justice, but then judge, presenting his credentials before the U.S. Senate, even before any of the allegations came out. Chuck Schumer said that he was going to do everything in his power to stop the nomination.
Right.
The Democrats weren't kidding. At the 11th hour, Dianne Feinstein, you know, broke the confidentiality of Dr. Ford in releasing that letter, and turned an investigation that should have taken place behind closed doors in the Senate to protect both Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh into a national spectacle. And then what was particularly alarming, and I think this is why you're seeing so many more conservatives become enthusiastic about voting in the midterms, is because I think what the root of the dispute was not necessarily over the particular allegations. We really got into an absurd place where we were arguing about his high school calendars and what certain terms meant. But, you know, it really came down to this idea, are we going to undermine the uniquely American principle, something that sets aside our law, our legal system from the rest of the world? Are we going to set aside the idea of innocent until proven guilty? Are we going to now just start convicting people based on mob rule?
Right.
And I think that that's why you saw, and that was particularly, you know, that was a particularly motivating concept for me and pushing back, because, you know, if we undermine that principle, I just feel like that's a fundamental American value that we're dispensing with, and that was just unacceptable.
Well, we have a senator here, our senior senator Tom Carper, He beat his first wife.
Yeah,
and got away
he's
with it,
something
okay?
else.
Right. So the issue is, if we're going to hold Judge Kavanaugh accountable for throwing ice in the face of somebody in a bar in 1985, then certainly Tom Carper can be held accountable for beating his late ex-wife and then getting away with it because of a complicit media that we have here in the in Newcastle County in the upper part of the state, such as the News Journal, and I'm just going to throw that name out there because that's exactly who did it. To me, Tom Carper now is in hiding because all those things that we said, well, it really isn't relevant in this time and place. I mean, he did it so many years ago, blah, blah, blah. Well, isn't everything relevant at this point, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And certainly that's the standard that, liberals are putting out there in terms of what was done with Judge Kavanaugh. And so, again, for them, as long as you believe what they believe, you're okay.
Right.
You pass the test in their eyes. And it's about these fundamental beliefs when it comes to issues like abortion, for example, which I think was most prominent among, what was being considered.
Well, that was what this whole thing, Alex, was about abortion. The whole thing was about abortion. No question about it.
And I thought that Susan Collins did a masterful job in her speech, that great speech that she gave, laying out, his legal philosophy and pointing out, some very basic concepts that in the emotion and the passions of the moment, people just seem to lose sight of.
Right.
For these pro-abortion activists to be claiming that one man was capable of overturning Roe versus Wade was just wrong. It was wrong as a
it was ridiculous.
It was ridiculous. I mean, first of all, you would have to have a justiciable case before the Supreme Court that they would even consider. And even then, after the Supreme Court did rule to overturn abortion, the states would be free to legislate that issue.
Correct, which is where it should be anyway. But that's another story.
Well, but the idea that all of a sudden Judge Kavanaugh would mean that women have to pull out coat hangers, it just didn't make any sense.
Agreed. No, absolutely.
It didn't make any sense if you're a student of American history and our system of laws, our three co-equal branches of government. It made no sense. And the liberals persisted with that lie. And I think that truthfully, the sexual abuse allegations were a part of that. But someone like Tom Carper, because he subscribes to those views, he gets a pass.
Right, exactly.
That's basically what I think, is that he doesn't, by the media, by his fellow liberals, it doesn't matter that Tom Carper abused his wife. It doesn't matter that Richard Blumenthal lied about being in Vietnam.
Right.
All of these transgressions are forgiven because they subscribe to this particular ideology.
Our guest is Alex Wilkes. She's with America Rising. And Alex, can we put you on hold for a minute, because I do need to get to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the morning consult poll, because there are a lot of interesting races, and it would seem to me that Republicans are looking right now much better numbers that they were looking at over the summer, and I think the Democrats have only themselves to thank for this. But can you hold on for just a minute, and we'll come right back to you? All right, you're listening to Delmarva Live. Our special guest is Alex Wilkes. Alex is from America Rising. She's talking to us about politics, and we're going to talking about some polling information as well. Just to let you know, some news that's just come before us right now. The pastor from the U.S. pastor who is being held in Turkey for 2 years on really trumped up charges of espionage. That pastor has just, in fact, within the last few minutes, been released. He's been held in Turkey for the past 2 years. He's been released and is now being, taken to and being brought to the American consulate in Turkey. We'll have more for you on that as well on the Talk of Delmarva. You're listening to Delmarva Live, 92.7 WGMD, WGMD.com. More of Delmarva Live and our special guest, Alex Wilkes, after this. You're listening to Delmarva Live on 92.7 WGMD, WGMD.com. Go back to our guest, Alex Wilkes. Alex, thanks for hanging in there. I wanted to go to this morning consult poll, and due to the lack of time, because we have a Fox News update coming up in about 3 minutes, can you just kind of give us, out of all these Senate races that we are wondering about, Joe Manchin, Heidi Heitkamp, I think she's toast, and I think the same with her friend in Claire McCaskill in Missouri. What do you think the situation with the midterms and the Senate, those houses that the Democrats are trying to keep, but it appears that they may in fact lose? What do you think?
I think that the Senate has definitely been lost to the Democrats, and that is squarely at the feet of Dianne Feinstein, just because of the Kavanaugh hearings. I think that really energized and closed the gap in some of these Senate races. Some people who were sitting on the fence all of a sudden weren't sitting on the fence anymore. And so people like Heidi Heitkamp and Claire McCaskill, Senator Bill Nelson, they have a lot to answer for with their constituents for their votes. And particularly some of these senators, like Claire McCaskill, voted against both Judge Gorsuch and now Justice Kavanaugh.
Right.
So they always had a tough road ahead of them. 5 of these senators out of the 10 that are running in states that the president won in 2016, 5 of them are running in states that he won by double digits. And so they always had a hard road ahead of them, and they made it that much harder for themselves in taking the wrong side in this Kavanaugh fight.
And in addition, it appears that the president's coattails going back to 2016 still come into play with the Senate, Alex, because those states that he really did quite well in, those previously strong Democrat senators, looks like they might be going and getting another job as a lobbyist in the near future, right?
Yeah, I don't feel too sorry for them. They won't be hurting for cash. But
no, that's.
But look, I mean, they did it to themselves, because when President Trump was elected, they talked a big game about working with him and being bipartisan and being someone who was going to deal fairly with him. And instead, they have stood against him, and they have stood with Chuck Schumer every step of the way.
Yep.
And so, their constituents are going to make them pay for it.
Alex, I want to thank you so much for coming on our broadcast. Would you be interested in coming on again? I'd love to have you on Delmarva Live again in the near future.
Absolutely. Anytime.
All right. Terrific. Thank you so much. That's Alex Wilkes from America Rising. Thank you so much, Alex. We're listening.